All right, so I am making this video of the vCluster Docker Desktop extension for those who couldn't be at our meetup last night. And if you watched the video, you might have noticed that we had some issues with the sound, so you probably couldn't really follow what I was showing. So I'm just going to run through that demo again in this video. To begin with, just a couple of short words about vCluster. So vCluster is a tool that can provide you with virtual clusters that can live on top of your Kubernetes cluster. And by using virtual clusters for your resources, you can achieve proper isolation between them. If, for example, you have multiple teams working on the same cluster, but you want them to have autonomy in deploying custom resource definitions or anything that you don't want to negatively interact with other teams' clusters. So yeah, you can use vCluster for this, and we have been working on a extension for Docker Desktop with which you can manage your virtual clusters through the UI. And to do that, you have to enable the Kubernetes feature of Docker Desktop. This will spin up a single node Kubernetes cluster named Docker Desktop for you. And you have to enable the Docker Desktop extensions, which is currently still a beta feature. And the vCluster extension itself is, as of this moment, still in beta, but it will be released very, very soon. I think either today or tomorrow. I can't be quite sure about that, but very soon. So once it's released, you can download the vCluster extension from the marketplace, and it will provide you with this UI. You can create a new cluster through this form, and I'm going to call it the desktop extension demo. What you can do is you can deploy the virtual cluster into any of these existing namespaces, or you can just create a new one. You can choose a Kubernetes distro. So the default is K3s, but you could also use K0s or the vanilla Kubernetes distro if that's what you want. You can also set a chart version here, which is the vCluster Helm chart version. So if you have any issues with the current version, you can always choose the preferred version here. And there's also a space where you can put in additional Helm values. Please refer to the documentation to see which are the correct values for you. But for this demo, I'm just going to stick with the default in everything and spin up the vCluster. This was really fast. So once it's spun up, we can also use the vCluster CLI to interact with the cluster. And we see that it has been spun up into this namespace called vCluster DD extension demo. So vCluster prepends your cluster name with vCluster dash and creates a namespace for your vCluster to live in. And through the Docker Desktop UI, we can now switch the current kube context or upgrade the virtual cluster. We can pause it and resume it later, or delete the virtual cluster. So I'm going to pause the cluster really quickly to show you that it works. There we go. So if we now check again through the CLI, we can now see that the status is paused. So we should be able to now resume the virtual cluster. And here we are. Yeah, it's going to create the cluster again, and we'll be back in business shortly. So, and finally, I will now delete the virtual cluster through the UI, just so we've run through the entire lifecycle once. And now what I also wanted to show you is that once you delete the virtual cluster, it will also delete the namespace that it created for the vCluster. So it will leave no trace once you're done with it, which is very cool. One thing to note also maybe is that no matter which kube context you currently are in, the vCluster extension for Docker Desktop will always create virtual clusters in the Docker Desktop Kubernetes cluster, which makes sense. So yeah, that's all that I wanted to show you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and thanks for watching.